watching that, I asked them questions, and they can fully understand it, and it drove us mad researching it. And yeah, like we stayed up till like 5 a.m. a couple of nights and took time off of work. Lost a lot of work as well.
You know, you mentioned qualified majority, and for those who might not be familiar with that, maybe you, Anthony or Dave, could give us a brief outline of that?
Yeah, it's switching over the voting system to be based on population. So Germany would have a larger population than Ireland, so they're going to have a bigger say. And it also it gives the power to the big countries, because to block any law from coming in, you need to have 4 countries, but that population also has to add up to 35%. So, for example, if all the medium-sized countries got together, such as Ireland, Denmark, Sweden, Netherlands, if you got even 12 of those countries coming together to block something, their population wouldn't equal 35%, so they'd be absolutely powerless. So you'd need the big countries like Germany and France to be able to block. So Germany and France, along with, say, Bulgaria and Romania, if they just get those 2 ministers to go along with them, they could block anything. And to pass as well, you'd need those 2 big countries. So it really it takes the power away from the states of the small and medium nations and gives it all the power to the big nations. And it's only those ministers from those countries. So it's really consolidating power.
Incredible. And I mean, in regards to the treaty itself, if we should focus on that, I mean, again, this has been said, but it's definitely worth repeating that in 2005, the EU Constitution, again, obviously was voted out or thrown out by the French and the Dutch. This was, of course, revamped in a tremendous ceremony. Basically, it was that they had down in Portugal, Lisbon, and then in a way kind of put together down there and signed by a lot of countries and so forth. Have you guys been able to kind of figure out if there even are some major differences between the old constitution that was rejected and the new Lisbon Treaty?
Well, all the experts we've talked to, and even a lot of the quotes from the elites in Europe themselves, it's anything from 95 to 98% the same as the rejected EU constitution. And Giscard d'Estaing, who was the main instigator of the constitution, he says 98% is the same as the EU constitution. Just some of the symbols have been taken away, but even the symbols they've taken away they're still there. So it's just a farce. Like, it is the constitution. It has all the legal aspects of a constitution, and it's the same as the rejected EU constitution. But they've just managed to bring this in a way that they're avoiding referendums right across Europe, and it's absolutely disgraceful how they're doing this. Ireland is the only country out of 27 that's having a vote on this, and there seems to be a huge blackout by the media across Europe, because we're getting emails. Like, we got an email from a woman in Denmark, and she told me that she reads 5 newspapers a day, and there was nothing about the Lisbon Treaty. And then she heard then that it was passed in Denmark, I think it was last week. Until that point, there had been nothing in the media about it until it was passed. So this seems to be what's happening across Europe. There's a complete blackout on it, and nobody seems to know that it's actually happening. It's just unbelievable.
It is incredible. And I mean, do you guys have any background in regards to why Ireland decided to have this referendum? Because again, the only country to have it, and that's pretty unusual in that sense. I mean, they could just ram it down our throats if they wish, but they're not doing this in this case. They're leaving it to one country. Do you have any idea why that is? Yeah,
it goes back actually to 1986. And our constitution is around since 1937. It was voted in by the people in 1937, and it's a constitution by the people, for the people. But in 1986, when they tried to bring in the Single European Act, our government, they ratified the treaty in the Parliament by a majority vote. And in just before Christmas in 1986, a man called Raymond Crotty, he took a legal challenge to this, and he said, no, it's illegal because there's a transfer of sovereignty from the people, so a referendum is required. So it went to the Irish High Court, and then eventually to the Supreme Court, and it actually held up the Single European Act for 6 months. But in March of 1987, the Irish Supreme Court said that if there's any transfer of sovereignty from the people, then a referendum is required. So from then on, it has been compulsory for the Irish people to have a referendum. So even if they did decide to go ahead with this and just go by parliamentary majority, then they would expect a legal challenge on this, and they would lose the legal challenge. So that's the only reason why we're having a referendum. It's not because our politicians are any more democratic. It's just the legal basis for this.
Right, and as I read kind of in the intro of our program here, this story from the Telegraph obviously reported on this fact that two leaked memos seem to suggest that the Irish government, together with Brussels, are, as the article said, going to great lengths to suppress bad news that might encourage a no vote. You guys over there, is this something that you really can pick up on if you follow the mainstream media? I mean, is there any negative press at all coming out about this in the Irish press?
No, the Irish press and the politicians are coming out with ludicrous statements saying that it's more democratic, and the reason why the 26 other states are not allowed to vote is because it's more democratic. The people elected their prime ministers, and their prime minister signed the treaty, so it's democracy. So if they had their way, we wouldn't be having a referendum if they had a choice, because they view that as democracy, that they get to choose what happens. So it's democracy for the political elite. And you don't even need this memo. If this memo never came out, you'd still have the quotes from the drafters of the Constitution and other prime ministers and foreign ministers of the EU. Like the Belgian foreign minister said that the aim of the Constitution was to be more readable, but the aim of the treaty was to be unreadable. So that's a big difference between the Constitution and the Lisbon Treaty. The Lisbon Treaty, they tried to make it unreadable, so it takes a lot more research to get to the facts of it, and they changed around some of the article numbers.
Really?
Yeah, and they're also saying that the Lisbon Treaty makes it more democratic because the national states will now be allowed to make a suggestion to the EU for new laws passed. But they don't say suggestion, they just say national parliaments will be allowed to consult with the EU with every law passed. But it's only a suggestion, so it's like being an employee in a company and you put your suggestion in the suggestion box.
Right.
The people running the company, the CEO doesn't have to even read it or consider it. You could consider it invalid if they do look at it. We're giving over, some people say, some experts are saying over 30 areas, other experts are saying over 50 new areas of power.
Incredible. And I was watching a lecture by, and I don't know if I pronounce his name correctly, Ashley Moat, I think it's called, on your website, wiseupjournal.com, and I think he said, and this was regarding the EU Constitution now, I think the older version of this, and he said that...
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and he said that this has been basically translated from French into English, and when that took place, actually a lot of the things were left out. Do you guys know anything about that?
Well, we're not sure about that, but we can say that in the Lisbon Treaty, the wording is very, very vague for some of the... You have to really look into very, very fine detail to see what they're actually saying in the treaty. and even one or two words makes a huge difference. For example, like Article 9 says that with regards to citizenship, and it says, I'll just get it up here.
In Article 52 of the EU Charter on Fundamental Human Rights, Article 52, it's a big vague piece, but it says that the EU may limit the people's rights if it's in the interest of the EU. If you can have a look, if you can read that article yourself, you can see that they've worded it on purpose to be vague. But the key point is there. They use the word limit, and in the interests of the EU, they can limit your rights.
Incredible. And, if you were to talk about some of the most, I guess, worrying aspects of this new treaty, Anthony, if we begin with you, what do you think are some of the, key areas in regards to, how vicious this could get if it actually is, put in place, so to speak?
Well, also in the treaty, Article 48, it talks about it self-amending, and they can basically change it. Well, if we vote yes, they can make changes to it, and handing over rights to the EU, and also for the first time becoming real EU citizens. At the moment, it's just notional. It's just a term. It's not legally. We're not legally EU citizens. So we will be legally EU citizens. And in the Irish Constitution, it says that no provision of the Irish Constitution invalidates any laws from the EU, which clearly shows you that the EU is superior. So when you become a real citizen of the EU, your loyalties legally will be to the superior entity, which would be the EU. And some of the rights, like the yes side is promoting that the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights will be legally binding, and they're promoting that as a wonderful thing. But if you look at the legal explanations, it says everybody has the right to life, but in the legal explanations it says that except if you're during arrest, if you're murdered, well then that's exempt. The police officers are exempt from that, and during riots they're also exempt from that. And Dave has the information about freedom of speech. There's a lot of stuff in this Charter of Fundamental Rights which is extremely worrying for the citizens of Europe. And I just want to say as well that one of the major changes in this treaty is that the EU will be a state for the first time. It will be a legal state on its own. So it will be a federal state, and all the countries present in the EU will be provinces of that state. And so it will be a federal state, and Ireland and Sweden and Denmark will be provinces of that state. And the European laws will overrule all national laws. So this is a very worrying trend. And if I can just say as well that one of the things it says in the Charter of Human Rights is that it says freedom of expression and information. And it says here that restrictions or penalties as are prescribed by law and are necessary in a democratic society in the interests of national security, territorial integrity, public safety, disorder, health, morals, confidence, judiciary. So there's huge. They have they can bring in huge restrictions on freedom of expression. In the opening statement, it says everyone has the right to freedom of expression. But then when you look into the detail, you see, what they're giving you on the one hand, they're taking away in the next sections. So it's a very worrying trend. Like the Charter of Fundamental Rights does exactly the opposite of what it says it does. It's really a highly restrictive.
Incredible. And guys, Anthony or Dave, if either one of you want to pick